Chapter 33. The day was about 18 degrees, the sky a dull, stormy grey. The wind howled ominously, a reminder of Storm Sterling, which had swept across Europe and left destruction in its wake. A storm in summer was an indication of the effects of climate change. Dr. Obi parked his white Ford Explorer between two black Range Rovers, grabbed his bag, and approached the cold, steel grey door of the secure facility. After signing in and receiving his visitor's badge, he was escorted to the visitor's bay. Inside, he placed his notes on the table and waited. He had promised Emmanuel an honest assessment. As he waited, his mind wandered. The media coverage had been merciless. Nigerian-born murderess, gold-digging widow. And to add to all that was the rising political storm. The bill had passed through the House of Commons and was now making its way through the House of Lords. The thought made Obi sick to his stomach. A genocidal bill dressed up as justice. The press had fangs, and they had already sunk deep into Rachael Brown's story. His thoughts were interrupted by the clanging of the door, and Rachael shuffled in with Tom Daniels behind her. Obi rose to his feet and waited for the cuffs to be removed, then introduced himself. "I'm Dr. Obi. Emmanuel hired me for an assessment." Rachael ignored his outstretched hand and lowered herself onto the bolted-down chair across from him. Her eyes were hollow, her shoulders slumped in defeat. She looked like a woman who had already accepted her fate. Tom left, shutting the metal door behind him. Obi went straight to business. He switched on the recorder app on his phone and spoke into it. "Today is Tuesday, the 5th of July. My name is Dr. Obi, and I am here with Rachael Brown." He met her empty gaze. "Can you state your name for the record?" "Rachael Brown." "How old are you?" 32. "Where were you born?" "Nigeria." Her voice cracked. "How did you get to England?" Rachael stiffened. Her fingers twitched against the metal table. "I was trafficked." He nodded. "Tell me what that means." Her gaze shifted away, as if searching for an escape route. "I was promised a job in social care." She scratched her forehead, looking anywhere but at him. "They gave me a passport." "Then what?" Her voice dropped even lower. "They flew me to Tunisia. I was locked in with two other girls in a flat for 2 weeks with barely any food or water." She swallowed hard, her fingers tightening around themselves. "The flat," she paused, searching for the right words. "It wasn't really a flat, just one room, concrete floor, a window that wouldn't open, the smell, the heat." Rachael sighed as the memories flooded back. "They gave us food every other day, a slice of bread, sometimes a tin of sardines, and water in one small bottle we had to share." She drew a shaky breath. "When they moved us, it was in the middle of the night. They shoved us into a van that already had 5 other girls. We were crammed together. They kept shouting at us to keep our heads down. I remember feeling so fearful." Her eyes clouded, fading into the memory. "The boat, it was worse. Too many people. The waves kept hitting us, like the sea was trying to push us back. We were freezing. I thought we were going to die out there. I really did." She blinked, the tears finally gathering. "When we saw the lights on the Kent coast, people started crying." A pause. The fly that buzzed near Obi's head was the only sound in the room. "And when you got to the UK?" Rachael clamped her mouth shut. Obi could see the battle waging inside her, the instinct to shut down, to lock it away, but he needed her to get it out. "What happened next?" he prodded. She was quiet. He was coming dangerously close to making her talk about things she had long buried in the dark recesses of her mind. She fought hard. She couldn't go there again. She turned her face away for a while. He asked again, gently this time, "What happened when you got here?" She wasn't deaf. She had heard him the first time. Her chest tightened. Then she whispered, "I had to pay them back." A bead of sweat formed at her temple, even though the temperature had dipped. She didn't want to remember the first few years she was in England. She wanted to block them out forever. "How?" Silence. Her chest rose and fell sharply, her fists clenched. "I can't." "Yes, you can. I need to know what you did to pay the traffickers for bringing you to the UK. "I can't," she whimpered again. She scratched the back of her head and squeezed her eyes shut. Tears threatened, but she didn't want them. She wanted him to stop. "I did what they told me to do to pay them." "Like what?" he gently prodded. "They sold me," she screamed. "Every day to different men, important men, politicians, businessmen, diplomats, the type you see on TV. I paid the pimps every single day. Get it?" Her words trailed off and she went silent. The fly buzzed again. Neither of them moved. "Then what?" "We were rescued by a charity," she said quietly, wanting it to end. "What charity?" "The Women of Mercy." "Why didn't you leave before the rescue, Rachel?" "They killed Honey. Her body was found in the Thames, and justice did not catch up with them. They had the best lawyers. They rubbed it in our faces, and they promised they would do the same to us and every member of our families. We couldn't leave." "And if you refused to attend to their requests? To pay?" he questioned. It was one thing to leave and another not to comply. She didn't respond immediately. Then slowly she raised her top just below her bosom and said, "This happened to you if you refused." The scar was as ugly as the heart of the person who inflicted it. A patch of skin that looked roasted, warped by cruelty. He turned his face away and almost gagged. Deep breaths helped him continue. "For the record, Rachel has shown me deep scars on her stomach," he spoke into the recorder. This was the truth the jury needed to hear. This was what Emmanuel needed to prove. She was driven by fear of her past. But first, he still needed to ask the hardest question of all. Not yet. He recognized the resistance in her posture, the way her body tensed as if bracing for impact. He didn't push, not yet. He knew better than to force a wounded mind into the fire before it was ready. Instead, he eased her into safer waters. "Tell me how you met Edward," he said, his tone lighter, almost conversational. A memory flickered across her face, a brief, fragile smile. "In a cafe," she murmured. "Tell me about that day," he encouraged, offering her a much-needed escape, however temporary. Rachel exhaled, her shoulders relaxed slightly. "I was a waitress. He came in for coffee, and then the next day, and every day after that until I stopped working there." Dr. Obi smiled. "He came in to see you." She nodded, her lips curved upward, a rare moment of warmth. "Yes, and we had been together ever since, until..." Her voice caught, the light dimmed in her eyes. "Tell me about the day of the incident, Rachel. What happened?" She flinched. Her entire body recoiled as if struck. A strangled sob tore from her throat, startling even Obi. "I can't," she cried. Her voice broke. Dr. Obi remained calm. "Why not?" Her head snapped up, eyes wide and haunted. Because... Her heart pounded furiously in her chest, a relentless hammering that felt as though it might shatter her from the inside out. Her breath came in sharp, broken gasps. Her shoulders shook violently. Her pain had no language, only sound. It clawed its way up her throat, tore through her, and escaped in strangled cries that reverberated off the cold walls of the room. It was primal, raw, the kind of sound that only came from a soul utterly shattered from within. It wasn't just grief, it was agony, mourning, self-hatred, guilt, all fused into a single sound. Weeks of suffering compressed into one relentless moment, a storm that had gathered for far too long. She wept again for Edward, for the life he lost, and for their baby without its father. The walls of the room felt like they were closing in, and the unbearable truth pressed in with them. It was all her fault. Her body curled into itself as the weight of it all bore down on her, crushing her beneath an avalanche of guilt. She had killed him with her own hands, the same hands that had once held his face, traced the lines of his palms, rested against his chest. Now those hands were stained. How could the history of her life be rewritten? How could she move forward without him? Her chest heaved as another wave of sobs took hold. Her body convulsed under the weight of it all. Dr. Obi said nothing. He simply sat there, watched and waited. He understood that some wounds needed to bleed before they could begin to heal. He reached for a box of tissues and a bottle of water he carried with him and placed them on the table. She didn't ask for them, but she reached immediately. Her fingers trembled as she twisted off the cap. She gulped down the water. It soothed the dryness in her throat, but it did nothing to quiet the storm inside her. She grabbed a tissue and wiped her face and clothes, erasing the evidence of the breakdown. "We'll take a 10-minute break," Dr. Obi said softly, reaching over to pause the recorder. He felt sorry for her, truly, deeply sorry, but he could not allow that sorrow to blur the lines he needed to keep clear. Emotion, however justified, would not convince a jury. Facts would. Evidence would. And at this point, he didn't yet have everything he needed to present in court as part of her defense. For Rachel's sake, for the promise he had made to Emmanuel, for the debt he would carry for the rest of his life. Because Emmanuel had saved him, he had dragged him back from a precipice most never returned from. Dr. Obi had once sat exactly where Rachel sat now, accused and condemned before he had even opened his mouth. Not because he had committed the monstrous crime laid at his feet, but because someone had made sure the world believed he had. The case had been perfect, too perfect. His fingerprints on the weapon and DNA under her nails. A timeline was constructed with surgical precision. It was so convincing that even he, in his darkest moments, had wondered whether he had lost time, memory, and lost his mind. His wife, his beautiful, brilliant, utterly loyal wife, was taken from this world cruelly, and the world had decided he was responsible. His colleagues had abandoned him, and friends had quickly vanished. Even his family, unsure and frightened, had retreated to a safe emotional distance. The whispers had followed him like shadows. He had been branded a monster before he had ever stepped inside a courtroom. Except Emmanuel. Emmanuel had believed him stubbornly, almost recklessly, perhaps because Emmanuel had seen something in him others had missed, or perhaps because Emmanuel lived by a conviction few dared to hold, that truth, however deeply buried, was always worth unearthing. Piece by painstaking piece, Emmanuel had dismantled the lie. He traced the evidence back to its architect. Truman, a colleague who had smiled in Dr. Obi's face, shaken his hand, shared meals in his home, and hated him with a venom fermented over years of rivalry. Killing Obi directly would have been too simple, too obvious. Instead, he chose a more exquisite cruelty. Take the wife, frame the husband, let him rot in prison. Then, step neatly into the life left behind. It would have worked. It should have worked. But Truman had not counted on Emmanuel. Emmanuel had torn the mask off and exposed the rot beneath the polished facade. He had dragged Dr. Obi back from the edge, almost literally. A debt like that was not one that could be repaid, not truly. And so here he was, helping Rachel because Emmanuel had asked him to. This was because he understood what it meant to be misjudged, misunderstood, mishandled by the justice system. He was helping because he owed Emmanuel more than a lifetime could repay. He looked across a small interview room. Rachel sat slumped in her chair, hollow-eyed, her hands loosely clasped. Her thoughts were far away, lost behind a fog of memory and guilt, imprisoned long before she had ever stepped inside a cell. He couldn't let history repeat itself. With a slow breath, he straightened his shoulders. The truth was in there somewhere. He just needed to find the thread. "Let's continue," he said softly. Then he switched the recorder back on. "Tell me what happened on the day of the incident, Rachel." No response. "Rachel?" he pressed. Nothing. "What happened?" he repeated, his voice firmer now. A deep, shuddering breath escaped her lips. "I couldn't sleep that night." "Why?" She flung her head back, lips tightening, irritation flashing across her face. "Why couldn't you sleep?" he asked again, gently coaxing her towards the truth. Her jaw clenched. "Because of my nightmares." "What nightmares?" Her fists tightened in her lap. She shook her head. She hated this moment, this conversation, and this place. "The ones about my journey to Europe," she whispered. Dr. Obi stayed silent, letting the space do the work. "The ones about how I had to pay for my trip to England." A pause. Then, "The ones about when I was 14. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Obi nodded, giving her space. "So your past life triggers the nightmares?" "It is not my past, it is my life," she snapped, her voice rising. He raised a hand in reassurance. "Okay, Rachel, this is your life now, not your past. I hear you. Tell me more." She turned to him suddenly, her eyes flashing with anger, exhaustion, and defiance. "Why don't you ask my therapist? He asks me the same questions you're asking now." "What type of questions?" he pressed. "Questions about my nightmares," she muttered. "Tell me about the nightmares, Rachel." A flicker of hesitation. Then, "Come on, Doc, let it go," she snapped. Obi held his ground. "I dream of the abuse. I dream of going without food for days. I dream of finally being given a meal, only to have it taken away. I dream, I dream, I dream." Her voice fractured. Then she collapsed into the chair, drained, shattered, broken. She preferred a prison sentence over this conversation, because reliving the truth was traumatizing. Obi remained silent. He gave her a moment. "Tell me about the night of the 25th of May. The room suddenly felt smaller. She was going there. She gripped her fists, clenched her teeth, trying to avoid the scene of the crime. "You have to say what happened," he urged. The knot in her stomach tightened, her throat dried. She reached for the water again, took a gulp, and knew she had no chance of escaping the horrible grasp of his questioning. "I heard a noise," she whispered, as though afraid someone might hear. "What noise?" She ignored him and continued. "I looked everywhere. I called out. No one answered." Her hands shook violently in her lap. "Edward had a habit of surprising me." She swallowed. But this was different. There was no response, and I got scared. "Why were you scared?" he asked quietly. "I was scared they had come back to get me. They wanted me back. I had no right to be happy and free, and I thought they wanted to take all that away from me." Obi stayed perfectly still, his gaze fixed on her. "I thought they had come back for me. I thought they were in the house with me. You know, like true crime, a home invasion. I was scared. I was sure the window was open, even though I had shut it 5 minutes earlier." A heavy silence filled the room. "And then?" Her eyes glossed over. "I grabbed a knife." A single tear slipped down her cheek. Ed came up behind me. Her hands balled into fists. He touched my shoulder. She squeezed her eyes shut. And I swung round thinking it was them. Her voice shattered. She crumbled, sobbing so violently that the sound barely seemed human, the raw, broken howl of someone reliving the worst moment of their life. For the first time, she had spoken about that night. Obi leaned back. This was a turning point for her healing process. And more importantly, he had the truth Emmanuel needed. See, O Lord, how distressed I am. I am churning within. My heart is pounding within me, for I have been most rebellious. Outside, the sword bereaves. Inside, there is death. Lamentations chapter 1, verse 20.